Phew, I sure am glad to be done with that. I think that just about covers all of the childhood-defining video games I haven't played. I mean Nintendo games I haven't played. Mario games. G12.
Finally! Bingo!
Super Mario Sunshine. Listen, if you're in this age range, you're a stinky bastard. Yup, finally on the board. If you're in this age range, however, it's pretty likely you grew up around this game. Sunshine sold more than 6 million units, which, granted, is about half of Super Mario 64, but that game came with a free cardboard box you got to throw away, so it's a little skewed. With the monumental success of Super Mario 64, a success which was only held back by the sales of the console it came on, there was practically a fever pitch for a sequel. So much so that a simple tech demo at Space World 2000 has a Wikipedia page that is still being updated. 64's release cast an enormous shadow of expectation on both Nintendo and the Mario franchise. The precedent had been set. Nintendo was on the forefront of 3D platformers and Mario would be at the helm. Nothing could touch Nintendo. And then Sony went, yeah, hey boss, what if we made an orange spin and a rat? And then the boss was like, purple dragon. Yeah, Nintendo got fucking body slammed into the concrete when it came to console sales with the N64. But with the GameCube's release, Nintendo was taking the fight to Oh, fuck it, dude. Regardless of the market, loyal Nintendo fans were eagerly awaiting GameCube entries for the big franchises. The next Zelda game, the next Metroid game, the next Jack Daniels Presents Drive Home. The GameCube was home to some of the best entries in all of these franchises. The next 3D Mario game, however, told a different story. Even if it is by a small margin, Super Mario Sunshine has the worst critical reception of the 3D Mario games. But why is that? Is this game truly the worst entry? Or did the burden of expectation lead fans to be unfair to it? There's only one way to find out. So, to recap, I played this game, and I thought it was a really pleasant experience, even if one that has aged. When I played this game, I forgot to close the window in my New York penthouse. Good thing Garfield never plays on the window, so— Garfield, no! But what happened with this one?
Aw, bro, get away from my wife!
Your first moments with Sunshine are ones that seem to be illustrating a point. The technical improvements from the N64 to the GameCube are put on grand display here. Full cutscenes, vibrant colors, stellar audio and music, the technological leap forward is pretty astonishing. It's almost hard to believe that these two games are only a single console generation apart. Moving on to controls, they're all really good. You'll first notice movement. Precise running and a diverse array of jumps makes traversing the world easy to understand yet difficult to master. The GameCube controller deserves recognition here too, as its design leads to a really intuitive experience. That huge fucking green button, that does the thing you're supposed to be doing every second of the game. All the controls are really intuitive like this. 64 already controlled really well, and it got strictly better with Sunshine. See Mario, that's the difference between you and me. You're easy to control, and that's because you serve a princess. I'm above manipulation because I serve a king. Ah! Splendiferous nuts today, my liege. Well, the first thing you'll notice is those controls, the second thing is the camera. So, to be fair, it has improved from 64. See? Better. Listen, I get it. Perfecting the camera in a 3D platformer has got to be an insanely difficult task, but Nintendo did not do themselves any favors here. Firstly, the camera is inverted on the Y-axis and maybe the X one too, I don't know, it's hard to tell. With no option to change this, that means that up is down, left is right, B is A, cowboys are kissing each other, without me? That's a problem you'll get accustomed to eventually, though I was fighting muscle memory for longer than I care to admit. A problem you won't adjust to, however, is that the camera moves so slow. Some challenges require speed that it just cannot produce. Now, I meant what I said. The camera has been vastly improved, so any criticisms with it, just remember it was probably 5 times worse than the last game. Past your initial moments, as you begin to really play Sunshine, its identity becomes clearer. There are 7 full levels in the game, each of which taking place somewhere on Isle Delfino. Within those levels are 10 Shine Sprite challenges apiece. These challenges range from boss fights to platforming challenges to the dreaded secret levels.
The horror. The horror.
Here's a quick rundown of all the levels. Bianco Hills, a really good introduction level with quite a lot to do and an overall solid start to the game. Gelato Beach, a really well designed level, this one knocks it out of the park with its theme. Add to that a good variety of challenges, even if some are fucking annoying, and you've got a knockout. Rico Harbor, a fine follow-up level, it's got a good mix of horizontal and vertical platforming, but it's really small and only has a couple challenges I considered fun. Also, there's dozens of dead bloopers on hidden boats in the back. You ain't from Michigan if you ain't ever done this before.
I'm vengeance.
Pina Park, my favorite level in the game. A bright, fun, expansive amusement park with plenty to explore and traverse. This is the level I came back to the most. They were cooking with gas when they made this one. Serena Beach, an interesting level. This one is a resort hotel, which is a great idea, but by splitting the level up into being indoors and outdoors, I feel like we ended up with the worst of both worlds. Cool boss fight though. Noki Bay, a pretty straightforward one. It's an all-out vertical platforming fest and it has some of my favorite sprite challenges in the game. Finally, Pianta Village. While it's a very visually well-designed level, almost every challenge here is like pulling teeth. I ended up self-medicating too hard and fell into a K-hole because of this level. Aiding in the platforming throughout this game is a new device, Flood. Flood is used in both combat and platforming, and its inclusion is what I feel should make platforming more varied in Sunshine than in 64. You have all the exact same movement options, but now you have a hover option too. While Flood does have other nozzles, they're used really scarcely, so the hover nozzle is the one you're going to have the overwhelming majority of the time. Finally, the secret levels. Remember how I said Flood makes the game more varied in theory? That's because these areas take Flood away from you and they make up like half the game. They're supposed to be very by the book's platforming sections. The reality is that some of them are. Most of them are just different flavors of fuck you though. Yeah, I'll take the cookies and cream please. Some of these levels require you to sit and wait for a painful amount of time. Some require constant trial and error to actually figure them out, and some literally just require you to do them until RNGesus graces you. Most are cutthroat as hell too. One single fuck up costs you life, lose enough of those, and you have to make the entire run back like we're playing a fucking Souls game running back to a boss. There are one-up mushrooms in these levels which were put there to prevent this, but some are so out of the way it's literally quicker to get the game over and run back instead of getting them every attempt. Fuck these levels, these two in particular. Also, as jarring as the dead bloopers, the shit you do to enemies in this game is fucking brutal. You fill PD Piranha up with so much water he can't move, then you stomp on his rotund, devious little belly to make him puke it all back up. Don't even get me started on what you do to Goop or Blooper.
Hey guys, I just took apart my first cockroach and I'm about to put it together.
That's all she wrote. After playing through the game, I spent quite a while looking back and trying to organize my thoughts. I had expected a pretty much direct expansion of Super Mario 64, but even within your first few moments, the dissimilarities of Sunshine to its predecessor make themselves apparent quickly. 64 dropped you in a hub area of Peach's castle and allowed you to explore an eclectic range of different themes and levels with no real intent to have any logical connection between them. Excuse me, Hoobly, that's because they're paintings inside the castle. It's apparent off the bat that Sunshine takes place exclusively on Isle Delfino. This means there's not going to be any snow levels, desert levels, or tick-tock clocks. Everything here is themed with a tropical island in mind. After the first couple of levels, when I caught on that they were fully railroading themselves into this connective identity, I found myself really excited. I knew that it was going to require some really creative ideas on the dev's part to prevent fatigue on the player's part of this visual identity. I can happily say I was far from let down. There is another, much less pleasant realization that you'll come to almost immediately. C64 drops you in the world, says, here's how to move, that guy fucked your girlfriend, go play with these scissors while mommy drinks wine. That open-ended nature is not replicated in Sunshine, however, which starts you with a very linear experience. When you first gain control, you have no options but to grab Flood and fight this thing. Then, it's to the plaza where you have no options but to chase Metal Mario. Then, one single level opens up to you with one possible objective. This linear design is not one that the game will shed, but we'll talk more on that in a bit. As with any game, my final thoughts included plenty to commend and plenty to critique. First, let's talk about where I feel Sunshine could use improvement, then we'll give it its field medals for bravery and combat. But first, who the fuck didn't drain their bathwater? The phrase fundamental problem is a really strong one, to imply that a criticism is inherent to something, that it's impossible to separate one's nature from problem leaves no room for interpretation. That being said, Sunshine absolutely has some fundamental problems. In order to keep my thoughts concise and cohesive, I've laid them out as a list of 3 items, ranging from most impactful to least. Let's get the biggest out of the way. What I consider to be Sunshine's biggest downfall is its linearity. I avoided talking about this too much in my initial thoughts section because I wanted to lay it all out at once. When you first enter a level in Sunshine, you're met with this large, colorful, enticing world. Some levels practically beg exploration, showing off unique characters, obstacles, or even interactions that draw you to them. You'll soon find, however, that putting in the effort to explore will actively make your experience worse. How is this possible? Well, you see, the levels in Super Mario Sunshine aren't open levels for you to explore with shine sprites as reward for solving puzzles. The levels are actually huge, dead, empty spaces save for one exact path that leads to your current shine sprite. If your current shine sprite doesn't involve certain characters, they just have dead dialogue trees and no interaction. If it isn't on the other side of a door, that door loses its functionality and now it's just a decoration. If it doesn't lead you to a section that just looks like it's fun to explore, that whole section is an empty, bare nothing. In fact, what you'd be forgiven for thinking the cutscene that plays when you enter a level is a broad suggestion on what to do, it's actually showing you the literal only thing you can do in that level. Deviating from that path is very simply a waste of your time. For example, early on in Peanut Park, I wanted to go explore, so I climbed the back of the roller coaster, which is already pretty slow and arduous. When I got to the top, there was literally nothing up there for me at all except for that monkey that shook my brains out. Now that, in theory, is disappointing but not detrimental. What made it detrimental, however, is the fact that I eventually had to climb it again later when I was given permission by Content Daddy, which made it 3 times worse than it would have been if I had never gotten it in my silly little head to explore in the first place. Who's your little kitten, Content Daddy? Me, I am. That's far from the only example I have of me doing this and getting burned before I learned to just keep the blinders on. This is what I mean by exploring being an active detriment to your enjoyment. If you take time to see everything there is to see, it'll be that much less impactful when you're forced to do it again later on. Sunshine will parade you through the same level 10 times, opening up one extremely railroaded path every time, and expect you to be excited when you have to come back in and do another one. I'm sure they chose to do this so that the world could be presented in a controlled fashion, meaning content was given to the player exactly how the devs intended for it to be. If that's the case, though, why even have the level be open? Just close everything off in the level except for your objective. They're already doing it in function, but literally doing it means you won't have players who are wasting their time exploring empty levels without realizing it. This hurts especially bad because in my opinion, Sunshine has better level design than 64, but it's proverbially shot in the head by this push towards linearity. Maybe this criticism doesn't land unless we picture the opposite. Imagine a level like Rico Harbor in an open state, with everything available to you at the same time. Upon first entering, you see a man offering bloopers as jet skis, leading to a red coin hunt or a secret racetrack. To your left, there's a giant blooper boss you can face, or a secret lighthouse to explore. Fuck dude, they've even got a giant Frankenberry and Count Chocula beating each other to death. The possibilities may be overwhelming, but in the best way. You'd have the prerogative to explore whatever's most enticing. Some objectives couldn't exist without doing others first, sure, but 64 did that too without sacrificing all of the exploration. Hell, even the hub area is a great show of how the game could have been. Exploring the plaza can lead to secret levels, or fun side objectives, or even the door that gives you a glimpse into your afterlife. God damn it, I got that pig room again. To me, this is the biggest letdown Sunshine touts. I really can't overstate just how much this soured my opinion on the game. You can argue that blue coins mitigate some of this emptiness, but why go for blue coins? Unless you're doing a 100% playthrough, they don't actually do anything. The only way to advance the game is to get 7 shine sprites on every level, and whether you have every blue coin sprite or none means nothing if you aren't a completionist. I stopped going for them within 2 hours of my first playthrough. I really just don't know why this decision was made. Maybe it was to display content in the order the devs wanted. Maybe it was to pad out runtime.
Maybe it was. Shut up!
Thankfully, my other 2 criticisms are much more concise. My second one is the amount of reused content in Sunshine. It's kind of staggering how much there is when you take a step back. Boss fights in this game are reused really often. If you see a boss, the chances are about 50-50 you're going to be fighting it again, and usually in the same level. To me, this would be a pretty big deal. But this is offset due to other sections of the game where the gimmicks are a ton of fun and they're used the perfect amount before being shelved. Because of this radical overcompensation, I don't think this impacted my opinion as much as it would have otherwise. Finally, Sunshine is a lot buggier than I expected it to be. Sometimes you can just straight up fall through solid objects or get stuck holding onto a wire. This just feels really out of place for a first-party Nintendo game of this period, much less a Mario one. Sure, other first-party games have bugs too. You only need to spend 30 seconds looking up speedruns of Wind Waker or Mario 64, but the bugs I encountered in Sunshine were intrusive enough that they came up relatively consistently in my casual playthrough. The secret levels were bad enough without me worrying I was gonna fall through the fucking floor, dude. Ultimately, I have zero interest in giving Mario Sunshine an easier time than it deserves. Nintendo does not have a soft spot for me, so I don't look at their games with any more favorable a lens as I would any other. As such, I don't have a problem with telling you that these issues are extremely detrimental to my opinion on Sunshine. If these weren't a part of the game, I could imagine Sunshine breaking through into my list of favorites. Unfortunately though, these problems were so significant, I spent time after I beat Sunshine debating if I even liked it. A debate like that can't happen without things which weighed in the positive direction though, so let's get to the part where I talk r/gaming out of spearing me in the chest.
Get me off of this crazy thing.
For as much as I just mad dogged this little bastard man and his wet antics, wait, I shouldn't call them that. Sunshine is a game that I feel deserves praise too. Where the game struggles in some areas, in others I feel that it succeeds with flying colors, even surpassing its predecessor. Firstly, Sunshine's choice to do away with the eclectic level design that 64 touted. We touched on this a bit ago, but I think that this was a bold choice by the team, and it's one that pays off in spades. Every level you explore is part of Isle Delfino. There's a harbor for incoming ships, a tropical resort hotel, bayside cliffs, all of these nail the theme of a tropical island and flesh out Isle Delfino more. No world that I've explored in any other 3D platformer comes even close to how thoroughly this one's done. Every level, every vista, every landmark is a part of what makes Isle Delfino such a good overworld. By the time I finished the game, I felt like I could draw out a comprehensive map of it. It was such a ballsy choice for the devs to pigeonhole themselves into a theme like this, but within that restriction, they found a greater sense of creativity in the level diversity than even 64. On top of how creative the level designs are, those creative ideas were executed masterfully. Every level, even the ones I dislike, deserve commendation on how well designed they are. Looking out over the horizon of the level you're in and seeing other parts of the island does such a good job of giving a sense of cohesion and identity to the world. A way to illustrate how well this is done is to imagine a comparison. If Super Mario 64 didn't have Peach's Castle, it could still be the same game. At its core, 64 is just an assortment of levels made to explore using platforming and puzzle solving. The goal of 64's world was not to be a cohesive one that you're exploring and piecing together, so changing the hub world or what levels you go into wouldn't affect its central identity. Sunshine, however, is the exact opposite. If you take away Isle Delfino and replace it with something else, this becomes an entirely different video game. Everything would have to be reworked. Levels, music, theme, even the color schemes they use. Here's the central difference. 64's levels are just means to an end, that end being platforming. Sunshine flips that, making the gameplay just the means to explore the island. 64's main character is, well, obviously Mario, but in my opinion, Sunshine's main character is Isle Delfino. This leads me to my second point. The atmosphere created in-game does such a knockout job of driving home the sense of identity. The music feels like you're on a beach, toes in the sand, watching Amelia Earhart fight off coconut crabs for her life. The color range and levels can vary to the point that I would just stop playing to take it all in. The Pionto's design, the biolife on the island, I can't think of a single design choice that breaks the immersion. Even the most radically different level in the game, Corona Mountain, makes sense when you consider that tropical islands are usually created by and on top of active volcanoes. Playing Sunshine is an experience, not because of the insanely good gameplay loop, but because of the sense of identity you can completely immerse yourself in. Identity. I keep using that word, don't I? Identity. Anyway, what's the third point? No, wait, seriously, what's the third point? Why am I fading out? Just tell me what the third point is. The most impactful thing that Sunshine left me with was more meta than any of its in-game components. I found that the central gameplay loop of Sunshine, while fun, left a lot to be desired, yet its fully realized sense of identity was jarring to say the least. Sunshine was not a game that was made to be similar to 64. Its different take on level design, its all-in nature on the tropical theme, and its focus on world building all stand out. Sunshine's sense of identity is what separates it so much for me. I enjoyed Super Mario 64 quite a bit, but to be frank, it's a game I'll likely never go back and play through again. Not for any negative reasons, but like I said in my review, I just don't feel like it does anything better than the games it inspired, and I have no nostalgia attached to it either. Super Mario Sunshine, a game which I didn't enjoy playing as much, is a game I could see myself playing again. That's because there's a way that Sunshine draws you into its world, completely immersing you. It's a game which is not like 64, and in a literal sense, it didn't try to be. You see, there's a little fact a lot of people don't know about Sunshine. 64's development was directed by Shigeru Miyamoto. Yeah, you probably heard of the guy. He practically slicing invented fucked bread. Now, while I feel Nintendo fans are quick to attribute Miyamoto with everything video games have ever done, it's impossible to deny that he has been a monolith in game design, especially during that time period. His assistant director and understudy during 64's development was Yoshiaki Koizumi. It was Sunshine's development when Koizumi was handed his first directorial role, and so, Sunshine tells a story. A fresh, new director in the looming shadow of the monolith he studied under, making a game to follow up what some consider that monolith's greatest game. You can imagine the weight of expectations on Koizumi must have been crushing. Much the same way the shadow of expectation fell on the Mario franchise, that same shadow fell on Koizumi behind the scenes. Sunshine is the story of the impact of expectations, both extrinsic and intrinsic. Some part of me wishes I could say that despite all this, the game rose to the occasion and surpassed its predecessor, but it doesn't. It fucks up in a lot of places. At times it's an unpolished, buggy mess with linearity that makes you want to rip your hair out, a camera that won't cooperate, and challenges that can be just plain old bullshit. I don't want to give the impression that I think that Koizumi is responsible for everything in this game. There was obviously a huge team involved every step of the way, but ignoring the bugs, both of my biggest critiques were on gameplay design choices, meaning it had to go through the director. With that in mind, in case I haven't been clear, Sunshine has some pretty big saving graces, but I don't think it's a very good video game. If you wanted Sunshine to be an underdog story of a prodigy director overcoming a looming sense of expectations, you came to the wrong place. The problem with standing atop the shoulders of giants is the fall is usually further than it would have been on your own. But wait, Koizumi didn't stop there, and the Mario franchise certainly didn't. In fact, it was Koizumi who directed Super Mario Galaxy, the first game in a duology which is critically seen as the pinnacle of 3D Mario games. Sunshine got lost in the shadows of what came before and after, but through that failure, it came out the other side with a sense of identity that is unique to it. I'm not being very clear here, so let me just shed away the clunky, opaque metaphor. The story told by the 3D Mario games is a microcosm of growth. Super Mario Sunshine was released a little over 20 years ago. People who grew up with it are likely all young adults now. That age range I showed earlier are some of the most pivotal years for discovering a sense of identity and for growing into the person that you're gonna be. As you continue to get older, hell, even well past that age range, it's easy to convince yourself that you're behind on figuring it all out, or that you somehow just don't have it down yet. But you don't have to have it all figured out yet. Even the fucking Mario franchise didn't have it figured out at one point. There's never going to be a moment where you step back and go, yep, this is it, I'm at the end of my personal growth. Stumbling and falling, or even outright critical failure, is a natural part of becoming who you are. Whether your weight of expectations is extrinsic, or the inner ones that sometimes feel like they weigh you down even more, it's the fate of all things to fail. Sometimes occasionally, and sometimes it may feel like that's all you do. But as we look forward through that microcosm of the 3D Mario games, it's easy to see. Failure is not the end of your story. How will you adapt and learn? But most importantly, how will you use it to hone and sharpen that sense of identity that makes you, you?